Hey, this is Trustworthy. Welcome to TrustworthyTech. Today is actually my first YouTube video for this channel. I'm going to be going over a beginner's guide on how to lube linear and tactile switches for mechanical keyboards. So if you found this video, you're probably a beginner or someone who's fairly new to the space and wants to learn a little bit more. That was my bird. If you found this video, you probably are new to the mechanical keyboard space or just looking for some extra tips on how you can make your keyboard sound as good as possible and also feel as good as possible. We're going to be using two switches today. I have a linear H1 switch and a NovelKey Blueberry switch, which is tactile. I'm going to go over the differences in both switches and we're going to take them apart. And then we're going to go over the different types of lubes or grease that you would use on these switches to make them sound and feel as optimized as possible. Keep in mind everyone has different preferences for sound and feel. I'm going to give you mine. It might not necessarily be the best for you. Check the description down below for timestamps if you're only looking for one portion of this video. I'm going to try and make it as quick as possible. If you have ideas for other videos or if you have questions about mechanical keyboards, I'm going to be making a ton of videos. So put those comments down below. I really do appreciate you stopping by. Thank you so much. Okay, so here we have my personal kit for switch lubing. I'm going to go through a couple of the items here, and then we'll get into actually taking apart the switches and lubing them. So here is a tweezer that I purchased for handling a lot of small parts inside of the switches. The parts are going to be covered in these oils and lubes, so it really helps to have something to handle them that's not your fingers. Otherwise, it's going to become a bit of a messy project for you, and you'll be getting that grease on everything that you touch afterwards. Here we have a GPL 104 oil by Krytox. I use this on my springs. I know that other people in the community are using 103 and 107, and we'll get into that in a later video on why you would choose one over the other for your springs. Here I have Trebosis 3203 and 3204. Both were purchased actually from vendors inside the community as well as on Mech Market. And then the 205 5G from Krytox, which has become very popular, specifically for linear switches. You'll see a lot of people using this on just about every switch actually. Here I have a number 2 Princeton brush. It is a really small flat head brush, and it really helps that it is flat because inside the switches you want to make just even contact with the surface, and it is a tight space that you're working in, so I think this brush is pretty good. Number 4 Princeton brush, a little bit wider. I've used this on springs. I've used this on larger parts like stabilizers, but for the most part you'll see me using this number 2 brush. Here is the switch opener, which was purchased from KBD Fans as part of a group buy. This one in particular I don't believe is available anymore, but there are a lot of switch openers that you will find available from many of the vendors in our community. And the very last part of the kit is my Lube Station XL. It has 100 spots on here for switches. I bought this from Prime Keyboards, and it's definitely made my process go a lot faster. So I won't be using this today for the 2, but in the future you will see that on stream and in my videos. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to take out 2 switches right now, and I'm going to replace them with the 2 switches that we will be lubing. But I want you to hear them first without lubing, without filming, anything like that. These are Yak Trash Holy Pandas, currently in my board. Ooh, that one's really snug. This is a Hot Swap KBD 67. I do have one other Hot Swap board that I have not built yet. We'll be doing that on a live stream hopefully in the next couple of days, weeks. See when I get around to it. Now I'm going to be dropping in the H1 linear switch, the Blueberry. I'm going to put the linear on the left. This is going into a brass plate. I'm going to put the NovelKey Blueberry here on the right. Both are in. Let's get a sound test. We're gonna do the H1. Here is the Blueberry. And here Holy Panda's lubed. So I threw that Holy Panda in there because I wanted you to hear exactly what was wrong with the other two keys. There are some glaring issues with both of them, actually. The H1, although it felt really smooth, sounded really plasticky and pingy. And the B key, which was my NovelKey Blueberry, did have a pretty loud, distinct scratchiness to it. And you can feel that actually in the bump as well. The C key, which was Trebosis 3204 lubed Holy Panda, Yak Trash Holy Panda, did sound noticeably better. Admittedly, this isn't the best sounding board. It's a pretty nice board, but when you start getting into the higher tier of customs, this wouldn't be considered or classified as the top tier sounding boards. It's on a brass plate. So that, of course, will affect the sound as well. I think that overall it sounds pretty good. Hopefully with a little bit of lubing, you'll see the differences. You'll hear them right away. We're going to start with the H1 switch, the linear. And usually you can open up pretty easily right off of these. Sometimes the housings are a bit snug. Some good force right down through the stem. We'll just pop it open, and that's what it looks like once it's popped open. Got a couple of components here. We have the top housing, the stem, and you can tell that it's linear because the legs are straight. The spring, the bottom housing with the leaf. And for this switch, I am going to actually use the 205G. I really want to dampen out a lot of that sound. I want to maintain some of the smoothness of the switch that I really liked. Really do not want to put a lot on the brush. Much harder to remove this from the switch than to put it back on. So show you up close what that looks like. That's just about enough. Actually less. All right. I'm gonna do the inside. The floor of this housing, the top housing, I'm going to do these little rails. All right. So now what I'm going to do is add the 205 grade 0 to the side of the stem. And here you see I have way too much on the side. And to fix that, I'm just going to take the brush and push it in one direction away, knowing that it'll leave some behind. Too much lube is going to negatively impact the sound and feel of your switch. And the big difference here on the linear switches from the non-linear or the tactiles, you're going to want to cover these legs. I'll give you much more smoothness. All right, then do the inside. Okay. The legs are going to go towards the copper. And then the larger side of the housing goes over the leaf. Remember that. And there you go. So now we're going to move on to the NovelKey Blueberry Tactile switch. And I will be using a Trebosis 3204 for the lube on this switch. And the reasoning for that is because I have used 3204 on other tactile switches. Currently, I have the Holy Panda lubed with 3204 in this board right here. And I think that the sound signature is awesome. The switches maintained a lot of their tactility. I don't want to grease the switch up too much. I wanted to preserve some of its tactility, and I'm really just looking to slightly dampen a little bit of that scratchiness. I'm not overall concerned with the smoothness so much in the tactile switch. I'm going to take this thing apart, and we're going to take a look inside, and I'll show you exactly what's different here and how we will be lubing this a little differently than the last switch. Okay, that came apart really easy. Top housing, bottom housing, spring, stem. Here we have a tactile switch. You can see that the legs are not as straight. They actually have a bump. And that bump on the leg, I'm going to try to point this out. This bump here on the leg is what gives it its rounded feel as you press through. That's what makes contact with the copper leaf in the switch in the bottom housing. All right, so we're going to not get lube on that. If you like a really smooth switch, if you prefer smoothness to tactility, you will be lubing those legs. But if you would like to preserve as much of the tactility in this switch as possible, you don't want to put any lube on that leg. All right, I'm going to start with the bottom housing. Really quickly, make sure we have some lube on this brush. That's about as much as I would start with. And I will do the inner channel here. All right, we do not want to get any lube on this part right here. Keep your lube away from that. Remember, less is more in these cases. If you add too much, it is hard to get off without proper tools. Okay. I did pre-lube this brush. I just put a drop of GPL 104 on it before I started recording. So I will just brush that onto the spring. Make sure we coat it. The ends are the part that you really want to make sure are covered, because that is what makes the most contact and the most noise if not properly lubed. Try to make this so you could see it. Okay. Kind of see, just putting a little bit on.
Once again, remember that the legs face the copper leaf. The bigger part of the housing goes over the legs and the copper leaf. Push it together. I'll always tell you which direction to put the top housing onto the bottom housing, and there you go. That already feels a lot nicer. And most of that scratchiness is gone. We're going to do a sound test now, and you guys can hear it for yourself. Now showing the after and before side by side. So I've got the H1 before and the H1 after. I have the NovelKey before and the NovelKey after. I'm going to throw on the keys, lower the mic, and we're going to do a quick sound test. I will also do a little bit of the Holy Panda, and then I will throw in a Holy Panda next to the NovelKey Blueberry. All right, so I think we made a lot of improvement on both switches. Specifically, the H1 switch I think came a long way. I know that if we were to introduce a switch film, which I didn't want to do in this video, that the switch probably would have even sounded better than it does right now. The NovelKey Blueberry switch did smooth out a bit in terms of its feel, which was fine. We were able to bring down the pitch ever so slightly, although there was still a lot of that scratchiness in the switch. In the future, I might have just gone straight to 205 grade 0 for the NovelKey Blueberry. I think it would have benefited from that quite a bit more than the Turbosis. It was a really scratchy switch to start. I did the side-by-side with the Holy Pandas that did use a 3204, but the Holy Pandas didn't start nearly as scratchy as the NovelKey Blueberry. He's stunned. What is going on? So if this video was helpful to you today, please remember to hit that like and subscribe button. That will really help me to produce more content like this. There will be a lot more on the way. I am going to be linking my Twitch and my Instagram as well as a Discord server. Definitely don't forget to put comments down below, and I will get back to those as soon as I can. Thank you so much for watching. What?